within Elul itself, it's Chai Elul. Chai Elul, the Rebbe explains, it means that this brings life into Elul itself. Elul is a very arousing moment, very encouraging moment in Jewish life. And Chai Elul is further me'oired even within Elul itself. It brings life into Elul. What, besides the particular day that it numerically spells Chai, which means life, Yud Ches. But on this day, we have two very important markers, and that is that on this day, both the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe were born. Sure, you all know this. The Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, this is the foundation of Chassidus. Chassidus, by its very definition, is to bring life into Yiddishkeit. Superficially, when people observe Hasidim, they say, oh, Hasidim are wonderful people, they're always joyous, they sing and they dance. But we have to know that this is only a manifestation. This is only how it expresses itself. But in fact, Hasidus has a very profound contribution. And it actually brings life. As a result of life, it expresses itself in joy. But not that the joy is what it's all about. The Rebbe, in a Sikha, one time explained, as the Rebbe is usually connecting, he says, Chai Elul comes out in the Parsha of Tovoi, in today's Parsha called Tovoi. Therefore, there is a relationship, and there is a teaching that we can draw from Tovoi that will explain to us the meaning of Chai Elul. And the Rebbe right away says, Ki Sovoi el ha'oretz, which means that when you will enter the land, that expresses the union of Chai Elul. And that expresses the union of Chassidus. Namely, that Chassidus says and explains and helps people to understand and to relate to the concept that Yiddishkeit is not something that you perform, but it is something that you actually step into. You come into it. You become united and one with it. This aspect of Yiddishkeit, this Hasidus aspect of Yiddishkeit, the Chai Elul, is perhaps the most difficult aspect of Yiddishkeit to absorb and to get into if you come from the outside, from Baal Tshuva. It's one of the most difficult aspects. And I want to explain what the difficulty is and try to discuss what is the approach and how do we get to it. The difficulty is very simple. We come from a background where every individual person and everything in the world, not only a person, everything that exists in the world exists independently of everything else. Everything is interested just in itself. And if one understands or knows something else, he knows something else through a means of relating to it, in other words, by knowing how it affects and what it means to me. Like we discussed the other day, the Seichel Behema, the Seichel of a Behema. That's what a Seichel of a Behema is. A Behema does not know things in the true sense. It knows things only how it is affected by it, what it means to me. That is the Seichel that is prevalent in the world. If this is a good thing to do, like the Alter Rebbe explains right in the beginning of Tanya, these are very sharp words, but they cut right through the heart. That when even good things, it brings down from the Zohar, right in the first page, even good things that Umis Ha'olam do, that non-Jew would be able to do. And in a certain sense, that applies even to the behemoth of a Yid, to the Nefesh HaBahamis. It inevitably involves some personal gain, something for himself. He cannot understand the thing for its own sake and dedicate himself to it. Why should he? What does this have to do with me? This is the mode of conduct in the world. This is how everything is understood. As I pointed out many times, and I will bring it on again because I believe that this is very important. This is also a very profound transition in our mind. When we say in davening, every Shabbos, Moitzich hamo mim koimo, that Hashem takes the sun out from its hiding place, and it brings the moon out from its resting place. It brings light to the world. So we think of it allegorically. Oh, it's a nice thought. It's a nice way of looking at it. But in reality, I know better. I know the truth. The sun is not taken out from any resting place. The moon is not stored away someplace, and Hashem takes it out. It's all a natural process, and it's all based on proximity of the various bodies, and it's all based on body of the power of. I'm sorry? Can't think of the word. Gravitation and all that. And it's just going. And it has absolutely no meaning whatsoever. Where is God's hand come into this? It's all running on its own. And here we stand in davening on Shabbos, and we're supposed to honestly say this, and not only say it, but actually experience this. This is Shabbos, and we sing about it. We make a whole song. We sing about it. Are we misrepresenting our own thoughts? Are we just playing a game? It's one of the. These are the things that are the most difficult thing to step over. What is Chai Elul? What is Chassidus? One of the ways that the Gemara expresses a Chosid. This is the legal. The Gemara expresses what is a Chosid, because the term Chosid exists in the Gemara. The Gemara says, what is a Chosid? A Chosid is one who does lifnim mishuras hadin. He goes beyond the demand, the requirement of the din. What is required of him. Now, What is the difference between one doing al pidin and one going lifnim mishuras hadin? Al pidin, that is something which is incumbent on a person, which is obligatory. And if he does not do it al pidin, he will have to answer for it. And in order to protect himself, so to speak, to provide for his safety, that he will not have to stand trial, so he does al pidin. For instance, when you drive and you come to a red light, and you stop at the red light. Now the red light means only that it is safety to you. But if it's safe and there are no cars around, you couldn't care less about the red light. But you wouldn't cross it, lest the policeman is hiding someplace and he'll catch up with you and give you a ticket. But effectively, you couldn't care less whether you cross a red light or not, as long as you didn't make an accident. That's the concept of al pidin. You couldn't really care less of what you're doing. But you shouldn't be caught. I don't want to transgress. I don't want to have to answer, stand trial. When one does lifnim mishuras hadin, this already indicates that he really cares about what he's doing. That it really means something to him. He's not just doing what is obligatory because it's obligatory, but because it has some personal meaning to him. He really wants to do the right thing. That's mean then he brings about that he should do lifnim mishuras. Beyond lifnim. Lifnim means beyond the letter of the law, beyond the demand of the din of the law. How does one come to do lifnim mishuras hadin? Why does one really care about what he does, except for the fact that he should not be accused of wrongdoing? That's a valid question in our minds. But if we understand Yiddishkeit, we understand Chassidus, we would see that the whole question doesn't even begin. Because the idea of Chassidus is, as I said, like the Rebbe says in the Sikha, Ki sovei al haaretz, you enter. Enter means that you are inside Yiddishkeit. This is your whole world. This is your whole reality. Say, for instance, to simplify and then come to the depth of it. If there is some dirt, some garbage on the floor, so if this is someone else's house, not yours, you won't feel comfortable. But you're not going to get up and pick up a shovel and start cleaning it. Because after all, it's someone else's house. But if it's in your own home, if it's a place where you yourself live, then you actually care what it looks like. And you care what it looks like. This is what we discussed many times over these weeks. You care what it looks like, not only how it affects you, but because you respect for the house itself. You care that it should be nice, because it's what we call a holy house. This is a place where you do avodah, where you daven, where you learn. This is a very special place, and it has to be nice. This is where lifnim mishuras hadin comes in. There is a halacha, just to illustrate a little broader, that in fact, when you daven and there is dirt in front of you, you're really not allowed to daven there. It depends what kind of dirt. There are certain places where you're not allowed to make a bracha. There are certain places where you're allowed to make a bracha because it's plain dirt. It's not the type of dirt that you're not allowed to make a bracha in. But if it disgusts you, if it makes you uncomfortable, you shouldn't daven there. It's not a cover to daven. Now, to eliminate that dirt, there are two ways of doing it. One is to take and to shove it under the table so you can't see it. It doesn't bother you anymore. Okay, now I can daven. The other is to bring a shovel and a broom, pick it up, clean it up, and throw it out in the garbage. What would be the difference between one and the other? Why would one do one or the other?
One, I guess he would do it just for doing so it doesn't disturb him personally. The other one he would do because he is doing it for the place.
Because he cares for the place. He cares for the reality, for the place itself.
And you're just following the law. Like if you just clean it up and
push it under the table, you just make it you make it possible.
You're correct. You're following the law.
That's right. You're following the law, but you don't really care what's happening. Under the table could be all kinds of dirt. Who cares? It doesn't bother me. We have to understand, this extends, this is a very profound thing, and this sounds simple, but this is very profound, and it extends in every facet of our lives, and particularly in real Yiddishkeit. This is what distinguishes, and the Gemara says, what is a chosid? Oise lifnim mishuras hadin. Lifnim mishuras hadin. Beyond, in front. It goes beyond the requirement of the law. Shuras. Shuras means the line. Hadin. Shurat. Hadin. Hadin. Din means law. Hadin, the law. It's simple terms that the Gemara expresses, which in fact capture the whole message of Chassidus. Like the Rebbe says, Ki Tovoi. That's the message of Chassidus. We come and we say, okay, I want to learn. What am I supposed to do? I want to do tshuva. And everybody wants to do tshuva. What am I supposed to do? And we learn a whole bunch of stuff. I don't have to tell you, learn. Everything that we learn is new. Quran, Tefillah, Tzitzis, Shabbos, Kashrus, Tznius, learn Gemara. What am I supposed to know? I know a whole bunch of stuff. It is possible, and I don't want to, to kind of aggravate anyone, but that is the fact. It is possible to change one's life over in terms of one's actions completely and follow every aspect of Yiddishkeit the way one is required, and in his mind and heart not to have really gone through tshuva, and the way one relates to his own life. What does life mean? And how one relates to his both social and personal obligations. Nothing has changed. And it begins to surface only after he is being tested, so to speak, when he is outside of the issue. Let's say a simple illustration of this. It's simple and yet quite challenging. We learn about Ahavas Yisrael. And Ahavas Yisrael means that there's a special mitzvah, special mitzvah in the Torah that you have to love a Jew. And loving a Jew does not only mean that you're not going to do him harm, but you actually have to have a feeling of love for every Jew. A feeling of love, that depends on the person already. Every person has a different quality of his midas and so forth. But for one thing, like the Mishnah says, and everybody knows that statement, that you have to give a person the benefit of the doubt. In the Mishnah, in the Gemara, it means, it expressed in the form of Don es chavore lekav schus. You have to judge a person to the side of schus. In other words, if somebody did something, you observe something, either you observe something inappropriate or he did something to you, you have to judge him lekav schus, to the side of schus. It means that if there is any possibility of explaining that this person did it unintentionally, innocently, he didn't mean it, or by mistake, you must apply that doubt. Instead of saying, he is no good. Now, again, this seems to be on so to speak, on a basic level. But the idea that every Yid is my business. Every Yid belongs in, so to speak, in my daladams. When we come to 770 in general, and particularly on Yom Tov, and particularly, as you will see, in Mitzvah Hashem, on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Simchas Torah, nobody has a place that he can call his own. He doesn't have a place. People have already called me, I always daven 770, but I don't have a place. I feel much more comfortable in this nice, cozy shul where I have a seat and I have this and I have that, and I can concentrate better. So every situation is different, but I just want to understand what it means. To be amongst Yidden and to be squeezed by Yidden, yes, it disturbs your davening. It makes it difficult. And you have to consider whether you're able to do it, because not everybody is able to. If he has a difficulty reading, he won't be able to read at all. I mean, there are different considerations. But the very fact of being pressured, because there's a lot of Yidden in that home, is not a negative. It's not something that makes me feel uncomfortable. There may be practical things that I have to be considered about. But the very fact that there is so many Yidden in Ahorim, we're all in the same place, and we don't have a place to turn around, that does not make me uncomfortable at all. Why? Because I belong there and they belong there. Because when I come to daven, I'm into the davening. I belong in the shul. I'm not me who is davening. In that situation, I can't think of myself, I am davening. I'm just there. Everybody gets lost in the shuffle. The center of 770 is known by the term the washing machine.
What did you call it?
The washing machine.
Laundromat.
What did he say?
He said the laundromat.
The laundromat. The washing machine, right? Yeah, the washing machine. Now, this is both. If it's a proper physical description of what's going on, but we have to know that it's not just a physical description. It is truly a washing machine. It washes out all the yeshes. It washes away all the personal gaiva and personal awareness. And it brings a Yid to be one with other Yid. It really washes us out. If one comes into 770 and he stands there in his davening, he's doing his own thing, and somebody passes by, doesn't say, excuse me please, blah, 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 just passes by, and he gets angry, I'm not saying that the guy who pushed him did the right thing, the wrong thing, but he has to examine his mind.
You can't get upset.
He has to examine his mind. Is he into it? Is he here? Or is he his own person? I'm saying these things, this principle is of such tremendous significance, because one can absolutely do everything right and still not really dive into Yiddishkeit. And we have to know, in today's Seder in Tovoi, okay, and I'd like you to kind of let me finish the whole thought, because otherwise it may be a shocker. In today's Seder in Tovoi is also the Toichachi. You know what the Toichachi is? The Toichachi is actually a major part of this parsha, a very long part, where Moshe Rabbeinu describes all the possible tzoros, suffering that may befall the Jewish people if they need the cleansing. The Toichachi exists in the Torah, found in the Torah twice. One in Chumash Vayikra, at the end of Vayikra in the Koisar, and once in Pashas Kisor. And the the points, the type of suffering, the types of degradation of the human being that the Torah describes over there is really shocking, beyond comprehension. And on top of that, after it's all said and done, Moshe Rabbeinu says, however, don't think that this is all. Even such things that are not mentionable, I don't want to mention it, also will happen. I mean, all the way on to all kinds of different things. And this is in the same Seder where it says, right before that, it says, you'll come into the land that Hashem has given you, and you will bring Bikurim, and you'll bring Meiser, you learn the beginning of the Pasha. And then there is a whole Pasha that simply says the following. You should know that today Hashem has chosen you as His nation, and you have chosen Him to be your God. I mean, we are mamish one. And right after that, boom. 98 different aspects of curse, different aspects of suffering. 98. And one of them, he says, I don't want to say anymore. And this is all part of the Pasha Kisove, which the Rebbe says Kisove means you come into Yiddishkeit. So clearly, all of this suffering, this is all behind us. Clearly, the Jewish people have actually, nothing is missed. We've seen it all, and then some. And that which is not mentioned we also saw. No question about it. But how is it part of Pashas Kisove? The idea is that in order to actually come into Yiddishkeit, one has to become one with it. And when is a person, all the suffering, Rahman al-Islam, is to wash away that which gives the person the sense that he is a separate. And he can be perfect absolutely in his deeds and fail completely on that test. And what the Torah is saying here in the Torah is this. You can be a perfect person. You're doing everything right. But you should know that Hashem will force the inside, the real neshama, to surface. How do we make things surface? You know, the Jewish neshama is compared to gold. Right? Silver and gold. Gold is yira, and kesef is ahava. How is gold mined from the ground? Gold comes as part of a rock. All kinds of dirt, all kinds of admixture in there. And the way the gold is mixed into the rock, it's useless. It comes in little bits, and it's totally useless. How do we get the gold out of it and get the pure gold out of it? How do we get the Jewish neshama to surface, which is the gold, which is the gold in the neshama? And I want to explain before I go further, why is it called gold? We have to understand, this is Chayel, and I would like you to understand this. The Gemara says, I'm quoting so that you will have a quote. What it says is that the world really is not fit, does not click with gold. The world does not deserve to use gold. Gold was created for the sole purpose of serving in the Beis Hamikdash. That's where it belongs. But stam in the world doesn't belong. It's too pure. It's too fine. Gold and the world don't mix. Why is it? What's the special about gold that it doesn't mix with world? The answer is, in the world, everything in the world dissipates, and it loses its potency, it loses its strength over time. Wood will right away, it will last for a long time, but it will eventually fall apart. Iron will rust. The world does not recognize, cannot relate to something that is absolute, does not change over time, does not change over any environmental circumstances. Either water will ruin it, or dryness will ruin it, or heat will ruin it. Something has to affect it. Gold is such an element that you can soak it for 1,000 years in water. It'll come out just as fresh and just as pure as it was when you put it in. You can melt it out down in the highest heat, and it'll come out even purer. It's not a worldly entity. It cannot be understood from a worldly perspective. That's what the Gemara says. The world is not fit for the gold. The world does not relate, cannot really understand the value of gold. It's a super worldly part in the world. But because that in the world there is also the Beis Hamikdash, that's what the Rebbe provided, that there is gold.
Inside that.
Huh?
Inside that?
Yeah, in the Beis Hamikdash there were kelim, the Neura was from gold, the Shulchan was from gold, there was plenty of gold. Okay. So how do we get gold? How do we mine gold? How do we get gold out of the rock? We melt the rock down to 2,000 Fahrenheit. I mean, to a heat that is unimaginable. But the rock itself melts. And that's when the gold separates from the rock. And that's when we can take off the pure gold. And the more it is melted down, the purer will come out the gold. The neshama, the yid, is gold. The neshama in the yid is gold. It means, as we spoke many times, and we'll continue to speak, and as you learn, you will see, the neshama is higher than world. Even though we have seichel, we understand things, but we understand things from a higher perspective. We spoke many times that there is seichel, the intelligence. There is the animal intelligence in us, and there is the human intelligence, and then there is the godly intelligence. The real neshama is godly intelligence. Godly intelligence is really higher than world completely. It sees the world from a different perspective. Like we started today. That when you see the sun rise, it's not a natural worldly phenomenon. Godly intelligence says, no, this is not a worldly phenomenon. There's nothing, the world doesn't exist. Only God is the truth. So what does it mean from a godly perspective? Everything has to have a godly meaning. If there is light, has to have a godly meaning. So it is God who brought the sun out, so that it would be bright in the world, so that you could do mitzvahs. Otherwise, what's the point of it? It doesn't exist if it doesn't have a godly point. This is how the neshama, how the gold within us perceives everything. And that takes a lot of meltdown, a lot of cleansing. And Hashem does not let us be lost, let the gold be lost in the rock. Just doesn't let it happen. As much as it gets mixed in, as much as it gets confused, it will be, ultimately everything will be cleaned out. And the gold will surface and it will be pure. This is where the Toichacha, Rahman al-Islam, comes together in the Parsha of Tovoi, which says simply, it's not going to happen that you will allow yourself to be just confused and just be part of the world and do your little thing. Ultimately, it has to be pured out. It has to come out. This is not Hasom the Toichacha, but the principle of Kisovoi, the principle of getting into Yiddishkeit and to bring the real neshama, and the gold of the neshama, bringing it out. This is what Chassidus is all about. This is what Chassidus is all about. What did Baal Shem Tov, one of the most dramatic and pinpointing statements of the Baal Shem Tov, that a yish poshu, that a simple yid, may have more purity in his avodah than the biggest lamb. That's what Baal Shem Tov said. A lamb, a scholar who knows the whole Torah. How can you compare this simpleton to this lamb? And the Baal Shem Tov loved the simple yid over and above the lamb, because the Baal Shem Tov loved the godliness that's in the yid, and he said the godliness is more pure and more direct and more open in the simple yid than in the lamb, because the lamb, his purity, his neshama is mixed in with his seichel, with impurities. There's a certain impurity. It's not perfect. Whereas the simple yid, his neshama comes right through. perfectly pure. It's gold, pure gold. There's a saying that I think is brought down in the Hayom Yom someplace also, that with a lot of hard work, personal work, it's possible for a big lamb to also reach the madrega of a yishposh. That he should also be something like an yishposh. But he has to work very hard on that.
The ones that do tshuva, they're pashu.
One,
They have that. Yeah.
every Eid has that. Every Eid has that. And what I'm saying is that this aspect is one of the more difficult aspects of tshuva, because this requires not just to learn what to do and to learn Gemara and to know and to absorb everything and to, so to speak, and to observe and do what's required. It goes beyond the actual deed. This is where a person has to actually turn around. He becomes a different person. He has a different perspective on life completely.